So I'll tell you a little bit about me and a little bit about the book. I live in Athens and lived here about 12 years ago, and my husband and I got tired of traffic, so we moved to Athens. So now I get to travel 316 to get here, which makes it even more traffic. But this is my sixth cookbook, and this was published with Southern Living. So I started out after culinary school. I ended up as a cookbook editor over at Southern Living, and that's kind of how I got started into cookbooks. So my last book, which we have over here too, before this book, was one called Fried Chicken. So I did a total 360 to then do vegetables. But I wanted to do a book that was representative of the South and that was easy for home cooks to use, but it was also planned around season. And the thing in the South that kind of makes it nice for us is that we'll have carrots in the spring growing season, but also in the fall. Same thing with beets. So a lot of things, it was hard for me to figure out exactly which season to put them in, especially between those two. So some things we'll have on the Easter table that we'll have on the Thanksgiving table, which a lot of parts in the country don't have that benefit. And when you head to the grocery store, you'll see why this is so much better, because y'all, most of the groceries produce-wise in the grocery store have started out a long, long way away, and they're not the color that they're supposed to be, and they're chemically ripened on the way here. So anytime you can buy at a farmer's market like this, and your produce was picked yesterday or this morning, it makes it so much better. So I wanted to do a recipe today called Spring Pea Orzo, because I don't know if y'all know, but a lot of people that didn't grow up in the South don't realize that peas actually are fresh. They think LeSueur peas when they think peas, which if y'all have seen them, they're not even the same color. So when I'm traveling, if you say peas, that's what people pop up with, and they sure don't know about field peas, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So in this recipe, y'all have copies of it. I'm going to do a lemon vinaigrette essentially to soak our pasta in. If y'all don't want to do orzo and you're a little bit more carb conscious, you can easily do rice. You can do this with even bulgur. If you wanted to use farro, you can make this kind of your recipe. And because the lemon is so bright and fresh in here, y'all don't even have to use peas. If you get home and you want to use some blanched asparagus, you can do that. So y'all just take this and take it in whatever direction you want. This is kind of a good base recipe to start with for anything. But first I'm going to zest a lot of lemons. And y'all probably know you always zest before you juice, because once you start juicing, it's really tough to get the zest off. And I'm using a microplane, which y'all probably all have at home. But these actually will get dull after a certain amount of time, so you want to end up getting a new one maybe every few years if you use it. I keep one of these in my car in case I ever get somewhere and they don't have one. So it's down in the side pocket of my door. With the children, I always have hand sanitizer and a microplane. But it started out in a woodworking shop where the carpenter was using it, like a rasp, if any of y'all have ever done any of that work. And his wife, true story, picked it up and thought it would be good for garlic and chocolate and zest. And that's where it came from. And then he sold the idea for $1 gazillion, and I'm sure they're both retired in the Bahamas. So we just want to have this bright zest that we're going to actually add in at the end. So when this zest sits for a while, if you chill your pasta overnight, just put this in a zip top bag or wrap it in some plastic wrap so it stays nice and fresh and it doesn't dry out. And then we're going to juice our lemons. And I brought one of my favorite tools. Did any of y'all have one of these? So this, when I was making this recipe yesterday, I made it so many times over that I had so much fresh juice, I was using an electric juicer. But if you just have a little bit of juice to do, this is perfect. And y'all, I don't know if many of y'all have marble on your kitchen counters, but a lot of times you'll see people who take their lemons to kind of loosen up the membranes and they'll press down and roll. A lot of times that oil out of the lemon peel will kind of spray out in a really fine spray, which if you do have marble on your counter, that can pitch your marble. So if you want to at home, if you've got pretty countertops like that, take a towel and just put it in the towel and then press it so you don't have any of the spray that comes out on your counters. Okay, so we're just going to cut these in half and get us some juice in here. And one thing nice too is if you wanted to use some orange in this recipe, it would really be nice. I wouldn't use, right now you can have blood oranges. I wouldn't use those just because it actually, I've tried that and it just makes it kind of pink. and you don't want a pink salad. Or we don't at our house. She asked how old my children are. I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so the funny thing, everybody always asks if they eat vegetables. And I have my 10-year-old, when I was pregnant with him, I was of the opinion that every child should just eat whatever their parents eat, and I would never have a picky child. And I made fun of moms who gave their kids chicken nuggets, and I had all these opinions. And you know what happened? When he was born, it all came back to bite me because I ended up with a child that doesn't like to eat hardly anything. And we did do chicken nuggets. We did the natural chicken nuggets. But that kind of stuff, if you don't have children and you start making opinions about other people's children, it comes back to get you, yes. So he is now getting more into vegetables because of the colors. And the more that he gets in the kitchen and does stuff, the more likely he is to eat it. But then my youngest will eat chicken livers, crawfish, anything that is not running away, that child eats it. So it's funny that they're two of the same people. Okay, so I've got my lemon juice, and I'm going to do some olive oil. And y'all can see on your recipe the amounts. One thing I like to do when I'm measuring out anything like mustard, if I have olive oil ahead of time that I can measure in the same cup, it actually lets your mustard come out much, much easier. So I'll show y'all. And this is here at the market. Y'all need to go try some if y'all hadn't had this local mustard. It is so good out of Decatur. And I love mustard with the whole seeds in there. I think it's so, so pretty. And a lot of times, any kind of thicker material is hard to get out of your measuring cup. But once you've got your oil in there, it just pops right out. That's the same with molasses or honey or anything. If you want to measure oil before that, then it just pops right out. And then we're going to do a little bit of salt and pepper. Do we have salt and pepper under there? All right. Thank you, ma'am. And y'all, I made our pasta mixture yesterday, so it would sit overnight, and y'all would have plenty. And so then what we'll do is y'all will taste it after it's been marinated this long, which is really, really good. All right, we're going to stir this up. And let's put in our onions. We're going to use these. You can use shallots if you want to. You can kind of use whatever you prefer. You could use green onions that are not red. One thing with larger green onions like this, just similar to leeks, you may have some sand and dirt that gets down in there. So I usually cut them in half first, just to make sure there's not something that I want to take out. And then I usually cut it in strips. Kind of one basic point on a vegetable, if you can ever cut it flat first, you want to always be cutting on a flat surface. So if you ever have a vegetable that's going to tend to roll on you, that's where you're more likely to cut yourself. And then just cut these in small pieces. And if you wanted to, if you didn't want to do shallots or green onions, you could go in a totally different direction and add whichever kind of extra vegetable you want. If you have a sensitivity to onions, you could do something totally different. You could do red peppers if you wanted to, or yellow peppers. And we'll put these in with our vinaigrette and then stir in our pasta. All right. And y'all, this is something I really feel strongly about, having things that are made in advance, because especially if you're entertaining or you're having just a busy work week, it's so nice to be able to do something like this and put it in the fridge in the morning or the night before and have it ready the next day. So we stir all this in, and then what we're going to do is put this in the fridge and leave it. I like to do it at least overnight. And then I have one here that has been going since last night. And we'll give it a stir. And you could do, y'all, if you've seen the tri-colored orzo, that's really, really pretty too. And I went ahead yesterday and stirred in my lemon zest. And the reason I did that is because I really wanted to sit all night and just have that good zest when I came in with y'all. So you'll see that that's already in there. Okay, now we're going to get to the fun part, and we're going to put in our peas. So when y'all buy peas, You don't want to have any part of the pea that is shriveled or dried. And peas have sugar just a lot like corn does. They have a lot of natural sugar. And the minute that vegetable is picked, that sugar starts converting to starch immediately. So corn's general rule is you really, if possible, to eat corn no longer than 24 hours after it's picked, which in this situation is not a difficult thing to do. At the grocery store, you'll notice that it's already gone sad by the time you get it at the store. But the same thing with peas. You want to cook peas as fast as you can, or eat peas as fast as you can. And on this recipe, I actually call to blanch the peas, but these peas are so delicate and sweet. Look in there, if y'all can see. So tiny and pretty. So we're not even going to blanch them. We're going to put them straight in. So when y'all taste them at home, if it's got a nice little, not too crispy, but really nice and fresh, don't worry about it. This is a raw pea is not going to hurt you. And so right when some of y'all were getting here, we were just eating the peas to make sure they would be good, just like that. And that's so nice. You could even put that in with scrambled eggs and it'd be good. So we're going to put in our peas. I'm going to steal this one from you. And as y'all can imagine, shelling peas takes a long time. So if any of y'all grew up sitting on the porch shelling peas or snapping beans, I grew up in South Georgia, and that was the thing. Like, we lived in a very small community where there were farms all the way around us. So we never had vegetables from the grocery store. If vegetables came in, my dad brought them in by the bushel. So then my mom and my grandmothers, and sometimes my dad we'd all get on the back porch and just work all day. And I remember thinking how boring it was as a kid, but so many kids now don't have that. So if you can ever do that in your house, especially with little people around, it's kind of a good Southern tradition. We'll stir these guys in. And I'm going to take some of these too. You can use snow peas if you want. I'm going to chop some of these and put them in. Because if a pea is super tender, even English peas, you can eat the pea pod. And it gives it some nice color. You can use, if you had to use frozen snow peas, those are actually not too terrible. You could do that as well. I'm glad it's not as hot as yesterday. I was thinking about that yesterday afternoon when it's 90 degrees. I was like, that pavement's going to be good in the morning. Think about August. What's it going to be then? 115? I mean, all the vegetables will be dried up by then. We need to make sure we eat them now. Okay, and I'm going to stir in some herbs. A lot of people stress out about the stems of parsley, the stems of oregano, and a lot of the softer stem herbs. I don't have time to pull every leaf off the stems. Y'all probably don't either. So if they're tender stems, just use them, just cut them. And on parsley in particular, parsley stems actually have more flavor than parsley leaves. So if you end up with parsley stems in there, that's great. That's one problem with snacking on peas, is you get them in your throat. Okay. So I'm just going to chop these up a little bit. Have y'all planted herbs yet this season? Oh, good. Because it's so much easier, I think, if you just need a little snippet. All right. And then we've got some mint, which I think will be really, really pretty. Now, y'all, if you're growing mint at your house, this is kind of a larger stem, so I'm going to pull these off. Mint will take over your garden faster than you think it will. So what we do at our house is we'll plant it in like a terracotta pot. And my husband hates this, but I make him dig a hole big enough to plant the entire pot in the ground. And it's not a huge pot. It's not terrible for him, but he complains about it. But the pot then conceals the roots in there so they can't spread, but it still looks like you've got mint planted in the ground in your herb garden. So that's kind of an easy way to keep it contained, because it really does get kind of crazy. And a lot of people think if it spreads into, let's say, your basil, then the root system tends to flavor the basil a little bit kind of minty. I've never had that happen, but people have complained about that for a while. On my grandmother's farm, the cows used to get into the leek beds, and then they'd have to throw out all the milk for, yeah. But it would have been nice to make a sauce with that milk, but I'm sure they weren't. That would be nice. So this is the thing, same thing, y'all. Whatever kind of herb you want to put in, you can make this your own. I don't ever like to have a recipe that is so strict on all of the different ingredients that you can't just make it something that is perfect for you. And these are fresh little chives. And y'all, you can use the tops of your green onions. A lot of times chives will be much more mild than if you're going to use a green onion top. And chives kind of, the best way to describe it, if you're growing chives, to get them a lot of times they'll get kind of slendery and they start having a lot of dried pieces coming out, so you have less fertile, nice stalks. And so a lot of times you can go out and kind of do like this, almost like a haircut. And you can pull out all the dried stalks and then come out and within a week or two, it'll have already flourished again. All right, I'm going to put in my last few peas. Ooh, yes. You can. She asked if you could use chive blooms. That would be beautiful. Yes. Any herb flower is wonderful. So, yeah. And I'm going to put in my almonds. Does anybody have a nut allergy to almonds? Oh, y'all are so easy. Okay. You won't believe the things that I get that people are allergic to. I taught a class once in Athens, and it was a class on beef, and I had a person in the class allergic to beef. Yeah, which is apparently a thing in Northeast Georgia, which I didn't know. But I had one recipe only out of 6 that was non-beef, and he came for that one recipe. But I was so afraid he was going to have some kind of reaction and die while we were there. But he didn't die, to my knowledge. He did not. All right, let me give this a taste. Oh, that's so good. Okay, y'all, I'm going to put in some almonds. Let me just chop them a little bit. Oh, that's so good. If y'all weren't here, I would just be in that bowl. And I brought something, too, for y'all to taste. One of my favorite things in the book is a collard green and olive pesto. So a lot of times, the very last of the collard greens are coming in right now. So in Athens, we have a farm that I'm on the CSA list for called Woodland Gardens. They don't sell at this market, I don't think, but a lot of restaurants, you'll see them on the list. But they have the last of the collards last week I got in my box. And this recipe, sometimes I get tired of just sauteing collards or just the traditional way, and I try to make them last longer than they normally do. And this is the perfect way. So I made a batch yesterday. And this morning I thought I would bring some if anybody wants to taste it so y'all can see. But it's beautifully bright green and super vibrant. You'll really like it. But we'll put that on your little serving when we serve out your orzo. Okay. And if y'all didn't want to add the nuts at home, you don't have to. I've tried this with pine nuts that are toasted that are really, really good. It's also really good with pecans. All right. Y'all, I was recently on, I do QVC fairly often. I was recently on QVC for another Southern Living book that's not this one. And it's a cookie book. And I took this book with me because I thought, well, I'll just convince them to put this book on air too. And when I was talking to them, I don't know if any of y'all watch QVC, but they said, well, no, our viewers don't like vegetables at all. They only like the cookies. So I didn't get very far with the vegetables on QVC. Okay, all right. I think we're ready to do this. Let me show y'all the pesto, and she'll put it on your plates. But do y'all see how bright and green and pretty that is? So this recipe has some Parmesan cheese, and it has lots of lemon. It's got olive oil, and all you do literally in the food processor is just stuff in the collard greens. It takes like 4 seconds. Put in your green olives or whatever your favorite olives, and turn it on and add the olive oil. It is so easy. But that way your collard greens, I think, go a lot further. Like this morning for breakfast, I had 2 scrambled eggs with a little dollop of that on top, and it's just really nice. So I hope y'all like that. Do y'all have any questions? No? Well, I have one person in the audience that she's not going to like this, but I have to introduce Ivy Odom. She's sitting back on the next to the back row. But Ivy worked with me on this book, so she has seen a lot of this in her former life, but she's now working at Empire State South. So if y'all go out to eat, she's in the kitchen. So oh, who helped me with the pictures? Gloria? No, Gloria didn't work on this book, but Gloria has helped me with 1.5 million things in the past. But Gloria, I don't know if y'all know Gloria Smiley, but she's like the grand woman of all things food. Right there. But a lot of times if you see somebody on one of the local channels in Atlanta doing a food demo, a cooking demo, Gloria is behind the scenes doing all the stuff. So it's a good thing. But this book was actually photographed, some in maybe 2 or 3 photographs in Athens, and almost all of it was photographed in Birmingham in the Southern Living offices. So it was kind of fun to go see. It's nice to see an image of a recipe you've worked on, and then you see it on a computer screen when it's finished. But this was, all these recipes not only went through my kitchen at my house and Ivy's kitchen, but they went through all the Southern Living test kitchens. So every recipe before it was published was cooked several times. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, that's a good idea. I know. She asked about cooking and freezing or just storing in general. So on the pesto, it lasts for probably 2 weeks in the fridge. But you can put it, a lot of people take pesto and put it in the cube trays of you remember when we had ice cube trays, and freeze those, and then you can pull them out and stir them into sauces. But on storing vegetables in general before you cook them, an easy thing is to think about how much starch a vegetable has. A lot of times, like on peas, field peas, if y'all have pink eye purple hulls or elite peas, we had those for dinner last night. Those like to be blanched literally for 2 minutes, pulled out and cooled and frozen. So at my house, when peas come in, that's another day. We're all blanching and freezing, and but a lot of times, oh yeah, here. You can grab you one. A lot of times vegetables like to be frozen separate from each other. So if you're freezing, if you cut the kernels off of corn and wanted to freeze that for later, I lay them out flat on a sheet pan so they're not touching each other, which is kind of seems a little OCD. But then when they freeze, they're totally loose from each other. So if you have a bag full of frozen corn in the freezer, you can scoop out 2 cups and put it in a recipe instead of pulling out a pile of corn. But anytime, like a tomato usually likes to be roasted before you freeze it because it tends to get really mealy and watery. So I usually take, if I, in July when tomatoes are coming in like crazy, I'll take tomatoes and a little bit of onion and some herbs and roast it in the oven until they're just really nice and browned and shriveled. And then I'll take even a little bit of red wine vinegar and stir it around and freeze it. And I usually do it in 2-cup packages. So later on in the winter, if I have pasta or real quick sauce I want on grilled chicken, it's excellent. And in the freezing section and the putting up section of the book, I talk about canning and ways, because here, especially in the South, we have so much in the summer, you can't possibly eat it all. And in this country, we throw away almost as much food as we eat. So anyway, you can try to save your food for a different season. When you're storing vegetables, like whatever you buy today and take home, just like Lauren said, anything with greens on top of it, those greens have a job to stay alive. So what they're doing to stay alive is to pull nutrients constantly out of the root, whatever the root is. It could be a radish, a beet, a a carrot, but as soon as you get home, cut those greens off of the root and store them separately. So I like to put them in kind of a loose paper bag or a loose plastic bag. You don't ever want to put them and zip them up totally because they need to have some airflow. But the greens then on almost everything can be sliced or sauteed and put into salads. Beet greens are really good stirred into scrambled eggs if you saute them just a little bit. So you can always use all parts. And a lot of people think, one thing I found when I was doing the book, that most people make coleslaw out of cabbage and they take that core of the cabbage and they throw it away. And a lot of years and years and years, generations ago, Southerners would take the core of the cabbage and slice it really thinly, either stir it into the slaw or into your recipe, or pickle it, or even serve it with a little bit of condiments if you're having it on a sandwich, like on pimento cheese. People have done that before. So it's got a mild cabbage flavor, less than the leaves do, but it's super crunchy, so it makes it kind of a nice texture. Did y'all like the salad? Oh, good. And what'd y'all think of the pesto? Isn't that yummy? Yeah. You could do that too if you wanted to use turnip greens, mustard greens. It's more spicy with mustard greens, but that works for any extra greens you have around. So, all right. Well, if y'all don't have any more questions, I'll scoot over here. If y'all want to get a book, I'll sign it for you, but I appreciate y'all coming.